Hey YouTube, Editor BonzEye here with a quick few disclaimers before we get into the video. So this is meant to be part 2 of a 3-part reaction to Warrior Tears, the history of the entire Warhammer 40k universe, as told by Trazyn the Infinite. So yeah, if you haven't seen part 1, you can click the link at the top right, which will take you to that previous video, or you can check it somewhere in the description of this video. So this part of the reaction will cover from when humanity gets involved in the story, starting off with the early evolution and early rise of humanity, and end at around the time the Emperor himself comes onto the scene and starts to forge the Empire. So yeah, as per usual, I won't do much conversing during the reaction itself because he gets pretty immersed, but after that we will of course have an in-depth discussion about everything he had just seen, and I'll add on a few details here and there. So yeah, hope you guys are looking forward to the video. With that intro out of the way, let's get right into the video.
We must speak about the so-called human element, as their empires take up many halls of my museum. Though sometimes unhinged and unpredictable, they are interesting and present true promise for us. We will cover much of their history, difficult as it is with the conflicting dates set by the Imperium itself. But no matter, we will account their records from our own sources. Imperial records will be our guide, or should I say, those Imperial records which I have procured will be our guide. I always found them to be of great amusement. They had begun on a small class 54415 planet, on the edge of the galactic arm of the Milky Way. They had first crawled from the primordial ooze as advanced water-based life. To think that glorified fish now wrap the galaxy in an iron fist is enough to burn my sensory processes to
glorified fish.
However, as we slept, these fish people became baseline primates, class 4 beings. For much of their early existence, the primitives accomplished little. It was their use of tools that separated them from the other animals of creation. From the first moment a cave-dwelling savage struck a porcine variant with a rock, it was all over. Slowly, they invented pottery and the bringer of security, that is fire. It was then that the warp entities had emerged from the void, the first knowledge of the immaterium. The damage from our wars against gods had ripped wounds in the universe. From these wounds came the apparent gods, extremely powerful creatures that bask in the souls of the dead, growing ever in power. The mortals referred to the beings as the Chaos Gods. They were named Khorne, Tzeentch, and Nurgle. What are 3 more pathetic void beings against the might of this galaxy? We have killed greater beings before. We may have to do so again. It is at this point that the Eldari learned the secrets of the webway and continued their dominance of the stars. The Imperial myth concerning the birth of their god Emperor is as follows. Seeing the inevitable fate of humanity to be consumed by the Chaos Gods, a group of humanist shamans banded together to stop this future. They had devised a plan to save their species from the thirsting gods committing ritualized mass self-annihilation. As the shamans died and their souls entered the warp, the power of the souls overwhelmed the beings that inhabited that dead void. The soul of their soon-to-be emperor was birthed and made manifest in his physical form. I must add here, this is perhaps one of my favorite twists of fate in all of history. Deep within a black stone complex, which crashed on Mars before the rise of humanity, is the Noctis Labyrinth. Within walls built 65 million years ago by us, lies the ancient Void Dragon. Imperial myth tells us that it is believed that the Emperor conquered this dragon on Terra. After this defeat, it was imprisoned beneath Mars for all time. Little do they know, those red-robed clicking iron princes, that their void dragon is a Catan let loose by corrupted slumber codes. I wonder how they would react to the news that its real name is the Eater of Knowledge. The humans began their empire on Terra. Their grasp of technology is slow. They spend much of their time throwing sharpened tree pieces at each other. Terra had a multitude of cultures.
Sharpened three pieces.
More important
Sharpened three pieces.
It was during this time that the Chaos Gods had fully awakened. With the abundance of new souls, the Chaos Gods had grown stronger. One human myth is that these events in their early years manifested the gods. Khorne was born in the charnel pits of millions of dead humans. Nurgle vomited into the universe in the wake of the vast catalogue of their illnesses.
Vomited into the universe.
And Tzeentch during the artistic awakening periods of each unique Terran culture. How arrogant to think that the universe would notice their tiny conflicts. Humans had conquered their homeworld. They had experimented with the possibilities of travel through the Immaterium, still unsure of how to harness its power for space travel. They had developed primitive spacefaring capabilities and set off to terraform their solar system.
Crazy.
They have always been amusing creatures, thinking themselves masters of the cosmos, even back when fire was their most advanced achievement. In essence, they are simple jellyfish, a travesty of nerves that stems from an inferior brain piloting a suit of bone wrapped in decaying meat. It is their arrogance that I enjoy so much. They were never meant for the stars, yet they do all to conquer each parsec. They fight amongst themselves more than any enemy. Tranquility makes them squirm. They lived for war. The humans built colonies throughout their nearest worlds, a slow process due to their primitive spacecraft. They continue to do what they do best, build and breed. Worlds are terraformed and colonized. Sublight travel was their archaic way of colonization. Each colony drifting farther from the home world of Terra. Overexpansion resulted in loss of communication. It was only a matter of time before this formula would collapse into bedlam and chaos. As the years drifted on, countless interstellar empires emerged, trading throughout the galaxies. Most of these supposed empires bore me. They prosper for such short spans of time. One does not even need to remember their futile existence. The humans furthered their grasp on nature, bending any resources they could find to their greed. Colonies stretched into the vast reaches of solar systems, overextending their empire. The myths of the Emperor continue to grow. It is said the Emperor arrived on Molech and found a portal into the Immaterium. A deal was made with the Chaos Gods for the gift of knowledge of warpcraft, allowing the Emperor to create the Primarchs. The Eldar Empire had grown into the most advanced civilization in the universe. They had achieved the apex of technology, creating their own desires from will alone. Lesser races proved no threat to their domination of the stars. The human gene saw an evolutionary jump. There were sudden appearances of psychers, as they call them, cursed individuals who can draw power from the Immaterium. Humans who developed the navigator gene allowed the first human navigators to make the passage through the warp. The great navigator bloodlines controlled warp travel. The humans continued to explore and colonize all that they found. Treaties were signed with dozens of Xeno races. It was truly a golden age for humanity. Technology often gets the better of the primitive species that craft it. The promises of comfort and ease of existence has led to the downfall of dozens of species. It was then that man's greatest creations, their slaves, turned on their masters in force. The cybernetic revolt, as it was once called, started with the Men of Iron. Anarchy ripped throughout all of humanity. The golden age of humanity ended in brutality. Who knows how many billions lost their lives, or what technology was destroyed in the process. Across the stars, another empire fell to time. The Eldar had enjoyed their moment of success. Technology was not their downfall. Their own desires tore them apart. Sheer physical impulses and depravity broke them. Their yearning for lust and pleasure cursed their kind. The being that spawned from their depravity forever changed the course of the stars. It was then that the being known as Slannesh came to be. The Eye of Terror that came to be from the creation of Slannesh obliterated almost all of the Eldar. She who thirsts, as some have called Slannesh, feasted on billions of Eldari souls. Some of the Eldari foresaw the dark future and left their homeworlds behind. The craft worlds were all that was left of them now. Vast, floating cities that are slowly fading away. As a fan of theatrical renditions of historical events, I find the performances from this era to be especially entertaining. The humans had peaked in their scientific advances. The historical blueprints, or as they are more commonly known, the standard template constructs, became the database of all human technology. Humanity was plagued with warp storms that appeared throughout the far reaches of the galaxy. Warp travel was impossible, and the colonies began to erode. This is a difficult time for my collection. Almost all the important artifacts had been stolen by that damned Mechanicus. Ugh, if only I were awake during this time. The humans are easy candidates for the corruptive powers that inhabit the warp. Through the warp storms, psychic energy flowed into space. The weaker of humanity's psychers suffered from demonic possession. The human race tore itself apart. The Emperor of Mankind began his plans for domination.
We'll do another quick discussion on everything. Like, this is now the Emperor's coming in, so obviously the story is going to go into what we more commonly know as like Warhammer.
Okay.
But prior to that, let's talk about everything that's prior to the Emperor that he's talked about right now. I think he's mentioned the Emperor before, but now he's going to go more into detail. So what do you think about the rise of humanity and also the downfall of the Eldar? Right, they rose and then they fell, and more or less you saw those two species as arcs throughout the story. Let's start with humanity. What did you feel about how he told humanity's story prior to now the Emperor?
I reckon it seemed like he found humanity a bit like entertaining to watch. You know, they're like underdogs to come. You know, like I can't exactly remember, but like he said, glorified fish. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. That he mentioned that. Yeah, but then they weren't created or anything, or were they like seeded by?
They were seeded by, but they're natural. Yeah, like let's say life was not by Catan, but the old ones.
The old one.
The old ones seeded life on Earth, but whether or not they specifically wanted humanity to exist or not is like that up for debate. The Catan, at the very least, they put DNA on this planet. What happened with that is up to.
So the old ones are not the Catan?
The Catan are the star gods who ate the stars. The old ones are the very first life forms that the Catan had to fight with the Necrons. The amphibians. Old ones were the amphibians. Frogs. They weren't gods, but godlike.
Yeah. And humanity had become already, by now, in this video, they're
multi-planetary. They already expanded.
They already discovered warp travel?
They kind of did, yes. And they were beginning to and at the same time too, people who could access the warp were beginning to be born into the human population. So prior to that, humans couldn't really. Humans were genetically, like, more or less modified. This is like naturally, like, let's say evolutionary modified, not artificial modification. But obviously, once humans realized what that was, they also started to like do actual genetic modifications on. But at first, there was no like real one. There were people who could access the warp, but they weren't genetically. They didn't have any genes that made them specialized. Naturally, people who could access the warp without much need for training began to naturally appear. And at the same time too, the humans, when they realized that this was a thing, they started to actually biologically modify it.
Fascinating.
And so, yeah, they started to access the warp, and at first they weren't using warp travel, they were just sending ships out there, colonizing the old-fashioned way, and then later on they
Use the warp travel.
used the warp. And then they like became so reliant on it. That
On warp travel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then when Slannesh was born, with that elves did that, the dark elves, the Eldar did their shit,
The Eldar, yeah.
ruined it for everybody, and so humanity too collapsed.
So when Slannesh was born, what happened? What do you mean?
So
how did that ruin it for everybody?
what happened was it disturbed the entire warp. Now the warp was way more chaotic, and so you couldn't navigate carefully through the warp because it was like demons everywhere. There's so much warp energy. It became difficult to like see where you're going, and you could easily get like surrounded by demons. So that's why warp travel became more or less impossible when Slannesh came to be. And yeah, and so like basically humanity became cut off. So actually 3 things happened that caused humanity to be cut off, not just one. So first Slannesh,
Yeah.
and at the same time, remember what I said about the people, genes appearing in the humans and
Yes.
Berserkers appearing? That also meant demons could now also infect Berserkers and invade. So you had humans being cut off from each other, the demons invading, and then later on, the cybernetic revolt.
Okay.
So like 3 major events that just crushed the human. The humans were so technologically dominant, yes. And then the Men of Iron too came along and just...
Were they erased or?
No, they're artificial intelligence.
Oh, okay.
It's just what they called them.
Okay.
So instead of Skynet, they called them Men of Iron. Any other specific things that stood out about you, what you've heard so far? Or we can...
He mentioned that he was asleep. So
Yes.
like, how long was he asleep for?
60 million years.
Damn. So he's the Necrons they've found immortality.
Yeah, well, indirectly, you know, in their robotic forms. So what happened was, because they knew they couldn't take on the Crocs and whatever, they rebelled against the Catan.
Yeah.
They captured the Catan, but they too were kind of screwed. And they knew they couldn't fight the Crocs and the Eldar in their state. So they decided to like go into hibernation and like sort of wait it out. And yeah, over time the Crocs devolved, and then the Eldar too became decadent and they fell. So it's like the plan kind of worked out.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, anyway, you see what it.
Okay.
Hey guys, so this is going to be the end of this part of Al's reaction to the history of the Warhammer 40k universe. Join up next week where we get to watch the last third of the video, and then Al and I are going to have a very long-winded discussion about the history of the Warhammer 40k universe. So yeah, don't forget to like the video if you liked the video, and subscribe to my channel to stay in touch for more content. With that, I'm going to end this one. This is BonzEye signing out. Catch you all later.